Hey everyone, hope you're doing well. It's going pretty good here, I guess, all things considered, in the chaos in which we live today. But I wanted to do something maybe a little different from what I've been doing, still Bible based, but I want to tie it in to some things that are going on in the world. Last time we spoke, or I spoke to you, I was dealing with the concept of repentance being a change of mind, and I based it on the passage that talks about come let us reason together. So I want to deal a little bit more with that, sort of. Let's kind of start here. In the book of Genesis and creation, we're all familiar with Genesis 1:27, which says that God made man in his own image. Now, however you view that, it's a pretty definitive statement that man and women were created in the image of God. There was an event that transpired, though, shortly thereafter, and we've read it many times. If you're a Christian, you're familiar with the story. Even if you're not a Christian, you're familiar with this story, with Eve and her interaction with the serpent. And we're always looking at how the serpent lied or misled Eve. So let's take a look at that one verse, or two verses in Genesis chapter 3, starting in verse 4. It says, "Then the serpent said to the woman, 'You shall not surely die.'" She had just told him that God had told her and Adam that in the day they eat of the fruit, they would surely die. She also added that when we touch it, and it's a topic for another day. But the serpent said to her, "You will not surely die." So that's a lie. We know that's a lie. The part I want to focus on comes after that. In verse 5, "For God knows that in the day you eat of it, your eyes will be opened, and you will be like God, knowing good and evil." There's so much there. I saw something there when I went back and looked at the original language just recently. That word knowing, it's a fascinating word. If you have a Strong's Concordance, look it up. The variations of meaning on it are amazing. But essentially, the word is yada, Y-A-D-A. You shall be like God, knowing, yada, good and evil. Here's why that word is so fascinating to me. In Genesis 4, in verse 1, it says that Adam knew Eve. That's the same word, yada. Adam, yada, Eve. And we understand that from that knowing of Eve, a child was conceived. So, what can we conclude from this? I'll tell you what I concluded. The serpent was looking at Eve and telling her, in the day that you eat it, you'll be like God in the regard that you will have an intimate knowledge of good and evil. It won't just be a theoretical knowledge. He was actually telling her the truth. You will have an intimate knowledge of good and evil by experience. Now, the part of it that's a lie, at least at this point, I'm convinced I'm going to deal with this topic another day, but just as a tidbit to look forward to maybe, he was saying that God was intimately aware of good and evil, that he was both good and evil. He had experienced both good and evil. Think of the ramifications of that. Just let that ruminate in your mind for a little bit here. So, you shall be like God. It's fascinating, that part of the sentence as well. Because from that time to this very day, man has tried continually to be like God. And what that is the very spirit of Satan, of Lucifer. In Ezekiel 28, let's see if I can go there real quick. Ezekiel 28. We see that Lucifer is the one who is actually familiar with good and evil on an intimate level. He said in verse 28, or chapter 28 of Ezekiel, verse 2, it's directed to the son of, or to the prince of Tyre, but you can clearly see it's referring to the spirit of Satan, or Lucifer. It says, because your heart is lifted up, and you say, I am a god. I sit in the seat of gods, in the midst of the seas, yet you are a man and not a god. That was the lie that the serpent told Eve, you shall be as God. And that this king of Tyre, or prince of Tyre, had bought into this lie that I am a god. Drop down to verse 6. It says, therefore, thus says the Lord, because you have set your heart as the heart of a god. And verse 9, will you still say before him who slays you, I am a god? This concept of the exaltation of humanity, lifting ourselves up. There's another place that speaks of this in Isaiah in chapter 14. You're probably familiar with this as well. It's more clearly depicting the fall of Lucifer from heaven. In Isaiah 14, verse 12, he says, how you are fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning. So we're very clear on who this is talking about. How you are cut down to the ground, you who weakened the nations. You have said in your heart, I will ascend into heaven. I will exalt my throne above the stars of God. I will also sit on the mount of the congregation on the farthest sides of the north. I will ascend above the heights of the clouds. I will be like the Most High. Yet you shall be brought down to Sheol, to the lowest depths of the pit. This continual self-exaltation, lifting ourselves up to either equal with God or above God. And that's the lie that the serpent told Eve, you shall be as God. And he based it on the idea that you would know good and evil, yada. You would be intimately aware of good and evil by experience. Lucifer certainly was. He is where we discover the mystery of iniquity, where sin originated in his heart. It says that he was perfect, that he was beautiful until his heart was lifted up. So what does all that have to do with anything? Well, we've seen it over history with the Tower of Babel, where they were going to build a tower up to the heavens so that they could be exalted. And they did this, of course, shortly after the flood. We've seen in the book of Daniel, Nebuchadnezzar, who was given a vision of coming nations and of future, the prophecy of what was going to come in the world, and that he was the head of gold. Well, he built a statue of gold because he wanted it to be symbolic of himself and his nation of Babylon as this eternal kingdom. There's something else in Daniel that I think is very relevant to us today. And I was a member of a church for years that used to hold Daniel and Revelation seminars. And they use this verse to describe well, let me read it first. In Daniel 12 and verse 4, it says, but you, Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book until the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. Now, what is this talking about? Here's where it gets, I don't know if it's confusing. I think it has multiple applications, to be honest with you. My understanding over the years had been that at the time of the end, the book of Daniel would be opened up to people. They would understand it better. That's certainly true. If you Look at what's going on now in the Christian communities. People are studying the book of Daniel more fervently, more deeply. They're also studying the book of Revelation for end time events and prophecies. So I think that applies. There's also the temporal or physical world in which we live in. Look at over the last, a couple hundred years. For a long time, there was minimal advances in technology. Look at what we've seen over the last couple hundred years. We went from horse and buggy to jet airplanes, space travel. Being able to talk over a wire was absolutely unfathomable at one point. Pick up a phone call that's attached to a wire and people will hear me hundreds of miles away. Well, we've gone one better now. Now we carry a phone in our pocket and we can talk to anybody through the air. Look at the advances in science and medicine. And knowledge has certainly been increased and at a rapid rate. There's something coming, though, that I'm deeply concerned about. It's and it's already here. It's in the early stages. And as typical of the way things work in this world, there are many, what's the word I'm looking for? Let's just say positive usages for what I'm about to tell you or talk about. But there's tremendous risk. And I think it ties back into this concept of you shall be as gods. Now, some of you are probably familiar with a gentleman by the name of Yuval Noah Harari. He gave a talk in 2018 at the World Economic Forum, and I didn't see it until a year ago, so 2023. It was old news by then. So the advances from that point to now are earth-shattering. Let me give you a little background on this gentleman. He's a world-renowned writer. He's an historian, a philosopher. I believe it's the University of Jerusalem. He's a best-selling author. He's written 2 books. One of them is called Sapiens, A History of Mankind. Actually, he's written several books. He's got 2 more since these 2. But the one that he did a follow-up to of Sapiens, the title alone should catch our attention. It's called Homo Deus. Homo Deus, that's Latin for man-God. Man-God. That's exactly what the serpent told Eve. You shall be like God. Now, Mr. Harari, brilliant mind, absolutely brilliant mind, very soft-spoken. He's an atheist. He's not that it's necessarily relevant, but some would be curious. He's a gay man who's married to another gentleman. Clearly not a follower of Scripture. At least not the Torah or the Holy Bible. He's made some amazing statements. I'm going to read just a few of them. He says, free will is a myth inherited from Christian theology. Now think of the ramifications of this. Now this wouldn't be a big deal if some knucklehead like me was saying it, but this gentleman, Mr. Harari, has the ear of the elite around the world. He was speaking at the World Economic Forum because he's closely attached with these movers and shakers, shall we say. And so he believes that free will is a myth. In other words, we aren't necessarily entitled to it and we don't even necessarily have it. He also says that any meaning that people ascribe to their lives is just a delusion. So this idea that your life has a purpose, a meaning, is important, that it matters, to him, I'm paraphrasing. This is not a direct quote, but your life, my life, is no more meaningful than anything you'll see in this world. Any animal, a cat, a dog, a lizard. Your life is no more meaningful than that. Uplifting. That's not the worst of it. He said during that speech, or that talk at the World Economic Forum in 2018, and I believe this is a direct quote, "We are one of the last generations on Earth." He's a believer in transhumanism. We'll touch on some of that. You might already be familiar with it. But he is convinced that we are one of the last generations on Earth. And remember, this isn't just some psychopath. Well, he might be a psychopath. I don't know. I'm hardly qualified to analyze that. But he's not somebody who people aren't listening to. This is a best-selling author who has the ear of the World Economic Forum and the world governments everywhere. And he's telling them, we're one of the last generations on Earth. He goes on to say, this is where it gets scary to me. He says, once you can hack something, you can generally engineer it. Now, if you can hack into a system, a computer system, you can figure out how it works, and you can now engineer a similar system, or maybe improve upon that system. Why is that important? He believes that humans are hackable. That means he believes that you can get into somebody's head, you can hack into their brain, and now you can engineer their brain. And he said the key to this is AI. That's one. And he says biometric data is important. And in order to get biometric data, he says, quote, biometric sensors are the most crucial link, close quote. Now remember, this was 2018. So let's put this together. One of the last generations on Earth of humans. Humans are hackable. In order to be able to hack people, we need their biometric data. And in order to do that, we need biometric sensors. One last quote. When we're talking about you shall be as gods, and man was made in the image of God, and he's an atheist. He does not believe we're made in the image of God. He doesn't believe we're all that important. He says science is now replacing evolution by nature with evolution by design. How often have you heard of the concept of a designer used in science? Many scientists today are looking at the world as we see it and understand it's far too complex to have just happened. But what they're doing is they're trying to fine-tune that design with another design, evolution by design. Back to what he said about the biometric data. In order to hack into the brain, we need biometric data. In order to engineer the brain, we need biometric data. And in order to retrieve that data, we need biometric sensors. That was 5 years ago. A year ago, another name you're familiar with, Elon Musk, announced a company called Neuralink. Neuralink, it's got huge upside. If I were some of the people that this could help, I would want this technology. I've got to be honest with you. the concept is, it's being marketed at least. And I'm not saying that this isn't even one of the main goals, is that those who are severely neurologically damaged or injured will be able to, just with their brain, and this apparatus that is implanted into their brain, they will be able to interact with through a brain-computer interface. And I know this is very technological, and trust me, I am not a techie guy. Do the research. But they will be able to interface through this Neuralink into a brain-computer interface with devices around them that will enable them to do things they're unable to do now. The extent of that, how far it goes, I guess we'll see. And we'll see soon, apparently, because on January 29th of this year, Neuralink started with their first implants. I truly hope the people that receive it receive a blessing from it and their life is made more full. I want to be clear about that. I can't imagine being locked in my body, being unable to move, unable to communicate. It would be a prison of hell. So there's great upside here. And January 29th of 2024, they successfully implanted this device in human beings. And all of the initial results, at least that I saw, and maybe something's changed since then, is that the neurological activity was positive. It was moving well. That's one company. There's another company, and Elon Musk wanted to be, he tried to become affiliated with them, called Synchron. Two other major players that did buy into Synchron were Jeff Bezos and Bill Gates. This one has an opportunity to be more of a broad market. It's not as invasive. It's more of a stunt that's in place. It's placed in the back of the skull rather than directly on the brain. It's a brain-computer interface implanted, and they can do it right through the blood vessels. It's a stent-like device, and it's more accessible to the broader demographic, to people like you and me. And the reason it's more accessible is because you don't have to have your skull opened up to have it put in there. They can just go in under the skin, into the blood vessels, and there you are. Why is that important? Well, what that allows them to do at this point, remember what it's doing. It's a brain-computer interface. It allows our brains to connect to computers. And it's done remotely. It's not done with wires. You don't have to be plugged into a computer for this. Now, could that be good? Well, it can give you access to information that you now have to struggle to find. You won't have to do a Google search. You'll just have to think, and there it is. That would be good. Maybe. Maybe not. Ever get an update on your phone? Your computer? Did you ever get a software glitch anywhere? What happens if that glitches? Or, the other thing about brain-computer interfaces, or just computer interfaces, is they're not a one-way path. It's a two-way path. It doesn't just send information out. It takes information in. Who might have access to that? Who might have access to putting that in your brain? into your thoughts. There was another speaker a year ago, also at the World Economic Forum. Another brilliant individual. She's a professor at Duke University. She's an ethicist, and she sees many of the benefits of these things, and I can't even imagine all the benefits because there's vast number. But she also sees some of the dangers. And her name is Nita Farahany. Her last name is spelled Farahany. Nita Farahany. From the World Economic Forum 2023, I would recommend that you watch this. Because a year ago, she was saying, she did a talk on brain transparency. Allowing the brain to be scanned. Now, not like, is it healthy? Does it have any wounds or growths, blood clots? No. Your thoughts being scanned. And it's being done through wearable devices. Most of them are done by wearing like a strap around your forehead or something like that. And they've been doing some of this in China already. But what they're working towards, and it's fascinating because I think it was about a week or two ago, and I wish I'd written it down, I didn't. I don't want to name the company, but one of the major technology companies has come up with a wearable device that can accomplish this brain transparency, and they do it through earpods. See, who wants to walk around with a big old strap around your forehead? Not many people. But if you're going to be listening to your music and your phone in your ears all the time anyway, why not? And her understanding of this, at least the way she presents it, is that it allows us to collect data. The more data we have, the more we understand how the brain functions, the more we know, the more we can do. Why would they do that? Well, there's lots of different explanations for it. It helps to know when, say, a trucker is driving, getting tired, maybe, get an alert that, he needs to pull over and his boss will get an alert. Watch the video. It's fascinating. I don't want to go too deep into it. What I want you to understand is there's a lot going on right now that people are fighting for control of your brain. And it is no longer through intellectual reasoning. They are doing it through technology. People want control of your mind. And I know that's crazy talk. That's just nutty. Daniel told us, many will run to and fro, knowledge will be increased. The serpent told Eve, you shall be as gods. Harari told us, we're one of the last generations of humans on this earth. People are hackable. All we need is the data. When we have the data, we can hack them. You know what happens when they can hack you? They can control you. I know. I sound like a nut. Got it. That's fine. That's fine. Do the research yourself. Look it up. Look up these names. Look up these videos. Look up these companies. And remember one thing I said, there are many, many major benefits, but there are monumental risks. Solomon, now he didn't know any of this stuff, but he said something rather fascinating. If I can find it. In Ecclesiastes. Well, there it is. Ecclesiastes chapter 7. Verse 29. And I love the way he words this. Ecclesiastes 7, verse 29. Truly, this only I have found. This is the one thing he found, that God made man upright, but they have sought out many schemes. Now, if they'd sought out many schemes in his day, where are we at today? Man is continually trying to deny their need of God, the existence of God, or state that we are like God. We are gods. God made man upright, but they've sought out many schemes. You shall not surely die. You shall be like gods. Romans chapter 1. Verse 22. It says, professing to be wise, they became fools and changed the glory of the incorruptible God into an image made like the corruptible man. We think we're so smart. We think we can figure it all out. We're professing ourselves to be wise. And all we're doing is taking what was made in the image of God and corrupting it. Verse 25 of Romans chapter 1. They exchanged the truth of God for the lie and worshiped and served the creature rather than the Creator. That's where we're at. We're worshiping the creature. Now, again, a lot of this technology is going to benefit some people in ways I can't imagine. But there is no way in this world, no way, that will not be used for nefarious purposes. There's no way you can get that technology to be glitch-free and not have impacts on other people. You don't believe that? You don't have to go very far back in our history. Go back to 2020, when COVID was running rampant and everybody was going to die. We're all going to die. We're going to die. We need the vaccine. And they pushed through 3 vaccines, and now we're seeing, just recently, the government's finally admitting, well, yeah, maybe there are some adverse effects. Adverse effects. I don't know if you know of anybody who's been injured. I do. More than one. I have somebody close to me who sees people on a daily basis who have been injured by that vaccine that was going to save humanity. Now, whether you think that their intentions were pure and wanting to protect people or not, that's fine. That's all well and good. Whatever. The fact of the matter is, there were problems. And there are going to be problems with this technology. And we're exchanging the truth of God, who made us in his image, for a lie, that we can be like gods, that we will be the last human generations on this earth, because now we're going into a new evolution of humanity, transhumanism. Verse 25, it says that they serve the creature rather than the Creator. We will deny God all day long as a species, as humans. We'll deny his existence, we'll deny his promises, we'll deny his guidance, and we will figure it out. Go down to verse 28. And even as they did not like to retain God in their knowledge, God gave them over to a debased mind. Interesting. To do those things which are not fitting. And it gives a long list of things, but I want you to notice in verse 30, one of the things it lists is that there will be inventors of evil things. I've got to be very careful here. Again, a lot of good in these technologies. but they can lead to immense evil. With people having access to your mind, to your thoughts, not just to know what you're thinking and doing, but to bring in thoughts into your mind and plant them. They've already got, one of the things Nita Farahani brings out is they've already got, they can't plant thoughts in your mind remotely, but they can disrupt your thoughts remotely. At least she claims that there's evidence of it. It's very important to remember, anything that the devil is going to use to try and trap us, to try and get us to deny God, to not follow God, is going to look good, just like that fruit. The principle is still the same. The techniques, the temptations, they may look different, but the principle is the same. It's good for you, and God is keeping it from you. You can't trust him. He, Yada, he knows good and evil. He doesn't want you to. He's keeping something from you. How did it end for Adam and Eve? Not well. How will it end for those of us who choose not to follow God? Because the vast majority are going another way. You know, the three Hebrew worthies, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they were the only three that day that didn't bow down to Nebuchadnezzar's golden statue. They got thrown into a fiery furnace. It looked like it was over for them until they walked with the Son of God in the midst of the furnace and came out unscathed. God's ways are not our ways. His thoughts are not our thoughts. He is God, and there is no other. We shall not be as God. We shall be his sons and daughters. Paul said something about Jesus in Philippians chapter 2 that ties in with this, I think. Philippians chapter 2. He said, now remember, we looked at earlier Lucifer and trying to exalt himself above the throne of God. And he told Eve, you'll be like God. He said, I will be like God. I will be above God. I'll set my throne above his. Look at Philippians chapter 2 and what God is actually like. Chapter 2 of Philippians, verse 5. Let this mind be in you, which was also in Christ Jesus, who being in the form of God, did not consider it robbery to be equal with God, but made himself of no reputation, taking the form of a bondservant and coming in the likeness of men. And being found in appearance as a man, he humbled himself and became obedient to the point of death, even the death of the cross. So you have two contrasting perspectives here. You have Lucifer, who wants to be elevated. He wants more. And you have Jesus, who is God, saying, I don't have a problem saying I'm equal with God because I am God, but I will go down to the very depths, the lowest possible point, that I can lift them up. And he says, let this mind be in you. I've been struck this week with how far short of that I've fallen. It's so easy to get caught up in our everyday routines and our ruts and our habits and forget the mind of Christ that he has asked us to have. And he said, let. He didn't say get. He said, let this mind be in you. The implication there is God is trying to give us that mind. While the world is trying to give us biometric sensors and Neuralink and Synchron and BCIs, God is trying to give us the mind of Christ. The world doesn't want that. They want more. They believe the lie. God is holding something out on them, if they believe in God at all. I was having a conversation this was yesterday. And maybe this comes with age. I've got some gray here. As we get older and we approach what is perceived to be the end, we get a little retrospective and look back on things that should have been done differently. I heard a message the other day. It was yesterday. The golden rule is to do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And the question was asked, was that an original statement? My initial reaction was no, it's not. Because I know there are many places prior to that point in history when Jesus spoke those words that others said something similar. The difference is, at least the examples that were presented, Confucius, I think, was one. There was a rabbi from, I think, 100 years before the birth of Christ. There were a couple others. They were always presented in the negative. Do not do to somebody what you do not want them to do to you. Jesus said, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. In other words, it's an active instruction. It's not just don't harm someone. It's do good for them. Look for the opportunity. And that's where I was convicted. As I was looking back, that's the mind of Christ. It's easy in this world to look at ourselves and think, I didn't do any harm, but did I do any good? If I see somebody, do I treat them like I would want to be treated? Do I do for them what I would want done for me? I don't know. Well, I do know, actually. So let this mind, the mind of Christ, be in you. Now, not beating anybody up. If anything, I'm beating myself up. The key word, let. And here's why. Hebrews chapter 10. Hebrews chapter 10. The author of Hebrews is actually quoting from Jeremiah and Ezekiel. In Hebrews chapter 10, verse 16, this is the covenant that I will make with them after those days, says the Lord. I will put my laws into their hearts, and in their minds I will write them. And then he adds, their sins and their lawless deeds I will remember no more. Scientists, brilliant people, wealthy people, powerful people want access to our minds. Possibly for good reasons. Definitely going to be negative impacts. God asked us to let him put the mind of Christ in here. Just let him do it. In the last days, knowledge shall be increased. What will we become more knowledgeable about? The things of this world or the things of God? Will we have faster thoughts because of a brain-computer interface? Or will we have purer thoughts, purer actions because of the mind of Christ being written and placed in us? It's the same battle that was in the Garden of Eden. You shall be as gods. And God said, you'll have my thoughts. You'll be my sons and daughters. And Satan says, no, you'll be like God. Trust him. I don't want to believe that lie. I'm horrified at what I've seen, what is possible. Things I can't even imagine might be coming. I've seen enough to know we're getting close to the end. What that means, I don't know. But I know that in the time of the end, we were told knowledge will be increased. I know we've reached a point in time where humanity is trying to play God at a level they've never been at before, at least not that I've seen. We're trying to control people's thoughts, not with arguments, not with debates, but literally control their thoughts. Let's go to the last book of the Bible, Revelation 14. And I want to leave you with this passage. Revelation 14, verse 7. So this is another angel flying in the midst of heaven. Verse 7, saying with a loud voice, fear God and give glory to him, for the hour of his judgment has come, and worship him who made heaven and earth, the sea and springs of water. Fear God and give him glory. This might be one of the last generations of humans on this world, but it isn't because of what Harari said it is. It isn't because of transhumanism. It's because God is going to transform his people and create in them his character. He's going to place his mind in their heart, he's going to place his thoughts, his law in their mind and in their hearts. He is going to do what he did originally in the Garden of Eden. Only it won't be a creation, it will be a recreation. All those who are in Christ are a new creature. And we are called to worship him who made heaven and earth. Worship the Creator, not the creature. The temptation is there. You shall be as God. The temptation is there. It's a great need. It's going to be good. It's going to help. I get it. Not judging anybody for any decisions they're going to make. I just think it's critical that we allow God to be God and don't believe the lie. So that's it for now. Hopefully some of this makes sense. If it doesn't, I pray that God will somehow piece it together. Do the research yourself. Pray about it. Ask God to lead you. I'm pretty sure I know where he's leading me. It's a battle coming. It's here. It's not the battle you thought it would be. This isn't a battle with bullets. This is a battle over your brain, your heart, your mind. Who are you? Are you a child of the King? Or do you believe you are a God? There's one God. I'm not him. I just pray he'll have his way with my mind and with yours. So, thanks for listening. Hopefully it was a blessing. I'll talk to you soon. God bless.